Okay, first off, just want to say thank you to @GGBrown100 on Twitter. Brought this to my attention. Apparently, Midori Matsuda, who is the character designer of the One Piece anime Wano arc, basically was a COVID-19 promotional thing saying to stay home and it's the maintenance of Enma. I did have an Enma discussion planned, but I thought it was perfect just to highlight this really quickly. Seeing Enma in anime form is going to be amazing, but it was just cool. But we have some more important things to discuss about Enma. This video, I think, is just going to be different parts. One is the disappointment of what Enma was supposed to be, in my opinion. And then the other part is just like what it provides for Zoro. I'm not going to get too deep into whether or not Enma is a power-up because I just feel like that's a toxic discussion, which we have to wait and see exactly how this plays out. But we're just going to talk about Enma and what it was introduced as and what it provided in the flashback and currently so far. And again, as well, the purpose of it for Zoro. Back in chapter 953, we find out from Hiyori that Enma was a katana she received from Odin. And the entire lore around Enma that got everyone excited was the fact that it was a legendary katana and the only one to have ever wounded Kaido. It built up a lore around Enma, and it gave Enma, I guess, a legendary standing because it was implied that this sword was special. In 954, Hiyori then tried to convince Zoro to trade Shusui for Enma. Both are great swords. However, it seems like they do distinctly different things. Of course, Shusui is a black blade, Enma is not. We'll talk about Enma upgrading or having the potential to upgrade, but Shusui, it is an amazing blade. Zoro commented about its heaviness, its durability, but the attack power of Shusui was a lot higher than previous swords. Zoro even commented about the famed durability of black blades. The difficult part about that is that we don't have many black blades in the series to compare it to other than Yoru, and that's wielded by the world's greatest swordsman, so it's like it's a bit skewed. However, Shusui and Enma, two great blades. In 955, we find out about Enma and Ame no Habikiri. As far as what they're supposed to do, apparently Ame no Habikiri, it cuts down the heavens, and Enma, it splits the earth to the bottom of hell. I think this plays into a larger theme of what the Straw Hats represent, but we'll talk about that separately in another video. Somebody did point out that I do that a lot, but I'm sorry, it's like sometimes when you're just talking about things, other ideas pop up, and so I do make a mental note of it, but nah, this is something that I've been planning for a while, so yeah, we'll talk about that. But however, the special property of Enma was to split the earth to the bottom of hell, and then Zoro proceeds to use Enma, and he cuts the edge of the cliff cleanly, much to the surprise of Nami, Momonosuke, and Sanji. But Enma also had another trait. It exudes the wielder's Ryo on its own. So basically, Enma is pulling your haki out of you without you trying to do it. So while this is amazing and it could cause enormous destructive capabilities, it could drain you to the point that it's detrimental, right? So Enma, while being amazing, it had a drawback if you cannot control it. It said the only other man to ever tame Enma was Kazuki Odin. So Zoro, based on chapter 977, 976, it seems like he doesn't have that problem anymore. I mean, in 955, we saw him cutting down some bamboo and stuff like that, but it seemed like he's gotten to a point where he can actually use it in combat. So therefore, Zoro has kind of gotten the gist of what Enma is. And of course, having Wado Ichimonji, that does help with controlling Enma. However, he's controlled it. He's gotten to a point where he's gotten a better grasp of Enma. But before we talk about exactly what it does to Zoro and how much it makes Zoro stronger, let's talk about the setup of Enma. Enma, again, was kind of set aside on its own, even apart from Ame no Habikiri, because how it was implied that Enma was the blade to scar Kaido, but as far as we know, both blades scarred Kaido. So Enma was supposed to be special on its own. My expectation of going into the flashback was that we're going to have a moment with Enma in which we find out exactly what makes Enma so special apart from Ame no Habikiri. Not saying Ame no Habikiri wasn't special, it's just that Enma has gotten a lot more legendary acclaim based on the story and the context of how it was presented. In the flashback, there are no significant Enma moments. To be honest, how the flashback progressed, or how it even started out, Odin was the man that was incredibly special. Oda went out of his way to show us how special Odin was in comparison to regular humans, right? So the setup of what Enma was supposed to be, I think it was a bit downplayed based on how special Odin was. And then going throughout the entire flashback, Enma did nothing significant enough to set it apart from Ame no Habikiri. There was nothing other than the fact that Toki could have given Odin the swords or received the swords from Odin while he was in jail. Enma did not have any significant moments. Granted, maybe Oda took it out where he was supposed to highlight Enma at some point in a flashback. Again, with his introduction, it seemed like Enma was special and different, and therefore that was the main reason Kaido was scarred. Based on what we've seen from Kaido versus Odin, that was not the case. Kaido was scarred of course by Enma, but because Oden was special. But Enma wasn't the only sword to do it. Ami no Habikiri also left a mark on Kaido. So I think the setup of Enma is weird. I'm not sure if it's a telegraphed way to give it some significance. So if Zoro does scar Kaido, it's like, well, we told you it was the sword to scar Kaido. Or Oda left some things out because he wanted to wrap up the flashback. But I expected something in the flashback in which we highlighted Enma at some point to show why it was so special. So now jumping back to the present and what it did to Zoro as far as like stealing his haki and regulating Ryo in some way, we never saw that with Oden. We never saw someone else try to master the blade. So these things are being told to us as far as like what Enma does, how Oden is the only one to master it. We didn't see any of that. So we're going off of face value what's been said, and personally I think that's taken away some of the hype of Enma. Granted, Enma to me is still a significant upgrade for Zoro because of what it forces his body to do and what it does to his training. I've mentioned before that Enma is a fast track, right? In which you're using Enma to basically give Zoro the same training that Hyogoro was giving to Luffy in Udon, in which Luffy is training himself to exude his Ryo to the point that it's impactful enough to scar someone like Kaido. Enma is doing that regulation training for Zoro and is fast tracking his way to being an arm and haki specialist on the same tier as Luffy. And pre-time skip, Luffy and Zoro, they were portrayed to be somewhat equals for the most part. Post-time skip, Luffy has separated himself. I'm not sure if this is some way of Oda trying to get them back on the same level. A lot of people maintain this stance that it doesn't really make sense if you try to compare Zoro and Luffy at this point because of who Luffy's fought and who Zoro's fought. It's just not on the same tier at all. But I think it's a clever equalizer or a way to get Zoro up to that level without going through the same things Luffy went through. So in the war, once Zoro uses a named attack from Enma, is going to be a significant upgrade from anything we've seen from Zoro because it is forcing him to regulate his haki, control the output, and also because he's doing more of it, his devastating attacks will be pushed to the limit just a bit more because of what Enma presents. I do think whether or not Enma is a power-up in comparison to Shisui is a valid argument because upon immediately receiving it, it's not, because he has to train with it. However, that's the case for any power-up. Once you receive it, you're normally not going to be as good with it. So you have to work on it. I guess technically the most accurate way to present this, right, is that Enma and Shisui, while both being great swords, Enma has a much higher ceiling than Shisui does. Because one, Zoro was not the one to make Shisui a black blade. Two, we don't know exactly what it entails to create a black blade. And three, the Ryo regulation is something that Shisui cannot do and basically just makes for more devastating attacks. Enma takes that to another level and applies an advanced technique upon that. So Enma, just off of those simple things, is a power-up. It's going to make Zoro stronger. He said it himself. That makes me wonder how people view other power-ups. Like for instance, Sanji in the raid suit. Do you expect Sanji with the raid suit is an immediate power-up because he's not using his regular techniques? There's no Diablo Jambe in his regular fighting style. So the buffs that the raid suit presents, is it an overall plus because he's not using the fighting techniques that he's been using his entire life pretty much? Do we account for that? What about Sabo with his devil fruit? Do we not view that as a power-up because he couldn't control it and it was more destructive than anything? What about Blackbeard or Marineford using the Guru no Mi and not really having control, just using its destructive power? Do we not view that as a power-up? Again, I understand Enma is a specific situation in which there are variables that you really can't account for in any other situation, but the simplest way to look at it is that Zoro, he got another great sword with special abilities that can be upgraded via the Black Blade method, not sure exactly what that means again, and also trains him to regulate his haki to give him advanced techniques that are needed for scarring someone like Kaido. So essentially, Zoro has gotten a sword to progress him to endgame Zoro. Of course, what Zoro does in Wano is going to play a part, but also endgame stuff is being set up with Enma. Because if Zoro used the advanced haki cutting technique, we're not going to be surprised because literally that's what Enma is preparing him for. That's what Enma is doing. And that's Zoro's specialty according to Oda, so that's another added plus. I think it all makes sense. I've also heard the argument that it being Zoro's power, so therefore it cannot be a power-up. So basically, let me get this straight. Because the haki being used is Zoro's power, that doesn't mean it's a power-up. Does that mean Gear 2nd is a power-up? What about Gear 4th? It's Luffy's haki being used, right? But if Luffy got an item that can make him use Gear 2nd faster, is it not a power-up? I don't think that's a valid argument saying because it's his power, it doesn't mean it's a power-up. Does that mean Diablo Jambe isn't a power-up? I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me understand that side of the argument, but I just don't see it that way. It doesn't matter if it's your power or not. You got an item to make you bring out more of that power. Basically, it's unlocking your potential. And if this item presents more strength or means more strength for you, therefore, you powered up. Even if you have to train a bit. you gain some power. Not touching on the Zoro killing Kaido stuff right now, maybe one day, not today at all. So with Enma and Shisui again, comparing those blades, while I think Shisui has been maxed out, not by Zoro, obviously by Ryuma, Enma is on the same level, but still has the ability to become a Black Blade or raise its rank, and Hitetsu said is based on Zoro. And he had confidence that Zoro could do this, because like I stated before, Wado Ichimonji and Enma, they were crafted by the same person. Shimotsuki Kozaburo, right? And I may talk about that at some point as far as Zoro's lineage, because we got some information in a recent SBS, but I think it's all falling in place for Zoro. The end game for him as far as post Wano, I've talked about that before. I link it as well so you guys can see where I think Zoro goes, but really I wanted to present how I viewed Enma as far as like when it was introduced, what I think now, and then the future for Zoro, because I think it's a really interesting blade, and once we get exactly what it can do in Wano, Zoro's endgame might be higher than I expect. Give me your thoughts, guys. What do you think about this? How do you view Enma and Shisui? How do you compare those two? What's the max potential for Zoro with Enma in Wano? And yeah, just give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoDH. Follow me on Instagram at bragody.ace. Shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Again, like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.